Hello and welcome to SpeakNest English Podcast Zone. This is episode 49, and today we're going to learn how to talk about your family in English. Family is an important part of our lives, and being able to describe your family members clearly can help in introductions, interviews, and conversations with friends. Let's begin.
Good to be here.
Today we're diving into something pretty fundamental, but also, incredibly personal.
Absolutely. Family vocabulary.
Exactly. The words we use to talk about family. And our source this time is actually a list from you, our listener, specifically put together to help you share your own roots, your connections.
Yeah, think of it like a starter kit, maybe, a toolkit.
That's a good way to put it.
The goal, really, is just to unlock these everyday words so you feel confident using them to describe, well, your world.
Yeah, it's more than just knowing what uncle means.
Yeah.
It's about having the fluency to tell your story, introduce people.
Paint that picture of your family history. Honestly, mastering these basic terms, that's the starting point. You can't really communicate that part of who you are without them.
Foundational.
And it is interesting how, relatively few words cover such a huge range of relationships.
Okay, so let's unpack this list, maybe category by category.
Sounds good. Where should we start?
Let's start right at the core, immediate family. The list kicks off with father, dad, and mother, mom.
Your parents. And it's useful that the list has both the, let's say, formal father and mother.
Yeah.
And the really common informal dad and mom. You hear both all the time.
Totally depends on context or just what you grew up saying.
Exactly. Personal preference.
Okay, then right alongside them.
Brother, sister.
Your siblings. That's a useful word too. Siblings, if you don't need to specify male or female.
Good point. It's that shared connection.
They're your brother or sister, you're theirs.
And then forming maybe a new core unit, husband, wife.
The person you're married to, simple, direct, defines that central partnership.
Definitely. And looking sort of downwards, generationally. Son, daughter.
Your kids. Male child, female child. And again, it links back to you. You're the father or mother to them.
Right. So that those terms cover that immediate circle for a lot of people.
The very closest ties, usually.
Okay, let's branch out a bit now. Extended family. The list gives us uncle, aunt. Okay, so these are usually your parents' siblings.
Right. Your dad's brother is your uncle.
And his sister is your aunt. Same for your mom's side.
Often really important figures, maybe the fun aunt or uncle.
Or sources of different perspectives, yeah. Special connections.
And what about their children? That brings us to cousin.
Ah, cousin. The child of your uncle or aunt. It's a classic term. Covers a lot of ground.
Anyone who shares a grandparent with you but isn't your sibling?
Pretty much, yeah. Through your parent's sibling.
Okay, going up a generation from parents now.
Yeah.
Grandfather, grandmother?
Your parents' parents.
Yeah.
Connects you back further.
Really key for family history for many people.
Absolutely. That link to the generation before.
And then looking down again, but from your sibling's perspective. Nephew, niece?
Right. Your brother's son is your nephew.
His daughter, your niece.
Same for your sister's kids. It's interesting. English doesn't have a neat single word for your relationship to them.
Oh, yeah.
You're just their uncle or aunt. There's no specific, I am the uncle nefter type word,
Oh, never thought about that. Okay, so as people are hearing these, it's useful to actually picture your family, right?
Definitely. Who's your aunt? Do you have nephews? That makes it real.
Puts faces to the words.
Exactly. And then there's one more crucial category here. In-laws.
Yes, the list specifically mentions in-laws, like mother-in-law, father-in-law.
This is so important. In-law isn't a standalone role. It's like a modifier.
How do you mean?
You add it to existing terms, mother, father, brother, sister, to show the relationship comes through marriage, not blood.
Ah, okay. So your spouse's mother is.
Your mother-in-law, their father, your father-in-law.
Got it.
And it goes sideways, too.
Yeah.
Your spouse's brother, brother-in-law, their sister, sister-in-law.
It's how English marks that whole set of relationships you gain when you marry.
Precisely. It's an acquired family connection.
So, wow, just with this list, you cover quite a bit of ground.
You really do.
Immediate family, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, nephews, nieces, and the in-laws.
It's a pretty powerful little toolkit. These are the essential building blocks.
Understanding them isn't just, like, a vocabulary test.
No. It's about getting the tools to actually talk about your place in your family's story.
Which comes back to the goal sharing your roots. This list gives you the language for that.
It empowers you to name the key people in your unique family narrative.
So maybe a final thought to leave you with.
Yeah.
Consider how these simple words, aunt, cousin, father-in-law, hold such complex, diverse realities. Every family is different.
Mm-hmm.
So how do your relationships fit these terms? And maybe more importantly, what stories, the funny ones, the important ones, the historical ones, do these words now help you unlock and share? Okay, so let's dive into something pretty fundamental today.
Yeah, talking about family. Specifically, your immediate family.
Right, how sharing that really connects you with others. And we've got some source material here.
Mm-hmm. It gives some simple but actually quite useful ways to introduce them.
Exactly. Think of this deep dive as, well, getting a handle on the key language the source offers for sharing your roots, basically.
And what's interesting, I think, is how focused this source is. It's not trying to cover everything.
Oh, definitely not.
It just hones in on a few specific things like parents, siblings, maybe a spouse, stuff people often share first.
Yeah, those initial introductions.
Yeah.
That's what it says these are useful for. Like it starts with your living situation.
Oh, right. The example like, I live with my parents and my younger sister.
Simple statement, right. But think about what it actually signals.
Well, yeah. Straight away, you get a sort of snapshot. Your household, maybe your life stage.
Are you independent, living at home, who's around you day to day? It's basic context.
Yeah, foundational stuff really grounds the conversation.
Okay, so then it moves on. Describing parents. The example was?
My father is a teacher and my mother's a nurse. That sort of thing.
So professions. Why that, do you think, according to the source's angle?
Well, jobs can be shorthand, can't they? For background, maybe shared experiences, sometimes even values.
That makes sense.
Sharing what they do.
Yeah.
It's more than just a fact. It paints a bit of a picture of, the world you might come from.
And it opens doors, right? Like you said, someone might say, oh, my aunt's a teacher too.
Exactly. Points of connection.
Okay, next up in the source, siblings.
Ah, yes. I have one elder brother and 2 little sisters.
Again, seems basic. Number, relative age.
But sibling stuff is a big part of identity for lots of people. The source picking number and age. It hints at family order, maybe those birth order dynamics people talk about.
Even if it's just on the surface.
Right. And it's just a common question, isn't it? People ask because, well, it often feels relatable. Most people have siblings or know the dynamic.
True. Okay, and finally, the source touches on describing a spouse.
Yeah, with the sentence, my wife is very supportive and caring.
Now, this one feels a bit different.
How so?
Well, it's not just a fact, like a number or a job. It's adding a quality, supportive and caring.
Ah, good point. Yeah, it shifts slightly, the source including that kind of description. Maybe it highlights how, with a partner, we often go beyond just who they are.
Sharing something key about their role or, like, their impact on our lives.
Exactly, a defining characteristic.
And the source is really clear. It says these sentences are useful when you're introducing your family to someone. That's the key context.
Right, the goal isn't your whole life story.
No, just effective, simple ways to share those first bits of info, helping people, get to know you a little.
So looking at what the source actually gives us, mastering these basic structures seems key.
Living situation, parents' jobs.
Right. Sibling count and order may be a key quality about a spouse. Having those ready, it gives you concrete ways to share a big part of who you are, quickly.
When you're meeting people, tools you could just pull out.
Ready to use.
So for you listening, thinking about these phrases from the source, how could you use them?
Yeah, think about them as a kind of template.
They show which pieces of family info are, like, the common currency for introductions.
Helping you share your own background when you connect with someone new. It gives you a starting point.
Definitely. And maybe here's a final thought, building on that source material.
Okay.
Consider how these really simple descriptions, just a few words about who you live with, parents' jobs, siblings, your partner.
Yeah.
How are they not just like a list of facts, but actually the first powerful brushstrokes in painting that initial picture of your world for somebody else? Okay, welcome to this deep dive. You've shared some really interesting source material with us. It all seems to focus on, well, something that sounds simple, but is actually quite significant, talking about your family in English.
That's right. And the core of it, what you've given us, it looks at how to share details about your roots, specifically, focusing on those connections to extended family.
Right. So our mission today is really to unpack the insights from this material you sent over.
Yeah, it lays out these pretty straightforward ways to discuss relatives, uncles, cousins, grandparents.
Using surprisingly simple sentences.
Exactly.
And I think that's where the real depth is, isn't it? These aren't just basic phrases.
No, not at all.
The material suggests they're like powerful keys, keys to unlocking deeper connections, helping you share a big part of who you are, where you come from.
Absolutely, they carry a lot of weight.
So should we jump into some of the examples the source material highlights?
Let's do it. Okay, take the first one mentioned. My uncle lives in Canada.
Okay. Seems simple enough. Just a location, right?
Yeah.
At face value.
Right. But think about what that simple phrase immediately opens up, conversationally speaking. It doesn't just state a fact. It sort of invites questions, doesn't it? About distance, maybe emigration history.
Oh, yeah. Or cultural differences, perhaps.
Yeah.
Between, where you are in Canada, how often you visit, that kind of thing.
Exactly. It links the family relationship directly to geography. And that hints at a much broader story, maybe about migration, global connections.
Or even just the practical side, like, how do you stay in touch?
Precisely. That single sentence, it can spark a whole discussion about family history and place. It's quite efficient.
Okay. And then there's this other example. I have many cousins. We meet during festivals.
Ah, yes. This
Yeah.
one moves beyond just, numbers or where people live.
What's fascinating here, I think, is how that word festivals acts as such a potent cultural shorthand.
It really does. You don't need to explain all the specific traditions right off the bat. Simply mentioning you gather during festivals, it immediately tells someone about the importance of shared cultural or maybe religious events in your family's life.
And that these festivals are key moments for keeping those cousin connections strong.
Yes. It's about shared experience, shared tradition, kind of embedded in the family routine.
It really paints a picture, doesn't it? Vibrant gatherings, shared history, and how those family ties are actively, kept alive through celebration.
That phrase captures so much more than just family size. It really speaks to a whole way of life.
Definitely. Okay, and finally, the source brings up, my grandparents live in a village.
Right. Another seemingly simple one.
But it instantly creates this visual, I find, and suggests a connection to a very specific type of community and lifestyle.
Yes, it might imply, say, a different pace of life compared to a city, perhaps different local traditions.
Or a strong connection to the land, maybe. Or a specific heritage tied to that place.
Yeah, it definitely hints at roots tied to a particular place, maybe one where generations before them also lived.
It immediately sets a context, doesn't it? For potential stories about upbringing, community values.
Or perhaps older traditions that are, preserved in that village setting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So these examples, even though the sentences themselves are quite simple, they powerfully illustrate the material's main point. These straightforward phrases are direct pathways to sharing your family traditions and connections.
They really are. The source material shows how mentioning an uncle's location, or talking about lots of cousins and festivals,
Or noting where grandparents live.
yeah, these are all really concise ways to convey significant personal and cultural information.
They give you the tools, essentially. Tools to express your background quickly, authentically.
And they allow you to give someone a genuine glimpse into your world, your history, what's important to your family.
And all using language that's accessible, that invites more conversation. It's not intimidating.
No, not at all. So when you look back at the source material, these simple sentence structures, they aren't just like grammar points, are they? Definitely not. They're conversation catalysts, deeply connected to identity, heritage.
So it kind of makes you think, based purely on what's in this material. How much of your own unique family story, your traditions, those connections and cultural touchstones, how much of that can you actually begin to share, to bring to life, just by intentionally using and maybe building upon these kinds of straightforward sentence structures that were outlined? Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
So this deep dive, it's all about a conversation topic that, well, you're almost guaranteed to have in English at some point.
Talking about your family.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we've got this perfect little source today, just a short snippet, really, of dialogue.
Right. A conversation showing how someone might introduce their family.
And our mission here is basically to dig into this specific exchange. We want to pull out the useful bits, the structure, the language, so that you, listening, feel, ready and comfortable sharing your own roots when the time comes.
Yeah, because talking about family is such a common thing, isn't it? It builds rapport.
It really does. Whether you're meeting someone new or just catching up.
And this little snippet we have, it's a great practical model. Simple, but effective.
Okay, so looking at the source itself, the conversation starts off with that classic question.
Can you tell me about your family?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a pretty standard opener, right? It's open-ended.
definitely. It invites the other person in, kind of signals, hey, I'm interested in you.
And the response in our source, it immediately gives a really solid starting point, the living situation.
I live with my parents and younger brother.
Straightforward. You know exactly who's in the immediate household. Paints a quick picture.
Establishes that core group right away. Sets the scene, like you said.
Right. And here's where it gets interesting, I think. Because it doesn't just stop with who.
No, it moves on quickly.
It describes what they do, their roles, maybe their status.
Exactly. We get, my father runs a business,
Okay.
and my mother is a homemaker.
Right.
My brother is in college.
See, that's so useful, isn't it? It's not just listing people. Runs a business, homemaker, in college. Those little phrases tell you a lot.
Yeah, they give context about their daily lives, maybe their stage of life. It's really efficient information.
And great vocabulary for you to potentially use. It describes function, not just who they are related to you.
It's fascinating how just a few words build that picture. You start to get a feel for the household.
And then the conversation in the source, it has that quick little check-in,
Oh yeah, the do you all live together?
followed by the simple, yes, we do.
Just confirming that living arrangement mentioned right at the start reinforces the picture.
But then, and I really like this part, they add another layer. It goes beyond just the facts.
After confirming they live together.
The response adds, we are a close-knit family.
Ah, that phrase, close-knit, that's a key one.
It really is. Because it shifts gears, doesn't it?
Yeah.
From the who, where, what.
To the how they relate.
Exactly. It describes the dynamic, the emotional connection, adds warmth, depth.
It really does. It shows you how you can layer the information beautifully. Start with structure, who's there.
Then add context, what they do.
And then, sprinkle in something about the feeling, the relationships, like close-knit.
It gives you a clear template you can adapt for yourself.
And the source snippet even wraps up with that very practical tip.
Right at the end, yeah.
You can practice this kind of conversation with your friends, too.
Which brings it right back to you, the listener. It's not just about understanding the example. It's about doing it yourself.
Practice helps you find your own words.
So the power of this simple source is really showing that pattern. Start with the invitation, ground it with who lives where, add context with roles, and maybe layer in the dynamic.
It's more than just words. It's a strategy, a way to structure your own family introduction.
So what does this all mean then? What have we pulled out here?
Well, we've seen the key moves, right? How to open the conversation.
How to ground it with the living situation.
How to add dimension with what people do, their status.
And how to express that feeling of connection using phrases like close-knit.
It's like a little blueprint, really.
A miniature blueprint for sharing a part of your world.
Yeah. And that actually raises an interesting thought for you to consider based just on what we saw in the source.
Oh.
How does following this kind of pattern, moving from the facts, like who's in your family and what they do, towards finding words that describe the emotional reality, the dynamic, how does that process itself help you find the most comfortable, the most accurate way to express what your unique family actually feels like to you?
How we talk about our families.
Yeah, the people who, shape us.
Exactly. And our mission here, looking at the sources, is really to figure out how we move past just, simple labels, like someone's job title.
Right. How to add more personality, more depth when you're talking about them in English.
Because that's the hook, isn't it? The sources really dig into why just saying my dad's an engineer or my mom's a teacher, it just feels like it's missing something huge.
It really does. It doesn't capture the full story, their spirit maybe, their role in your life.
Absolutely. And the core idea, sort of threaded through all these sources, is that just listing jobs or facts, it leaves the listener with a pretty flat picture.
A bit one-dimensional. And it's a real missed opportunity, isn't it, to share where you come from, the essence of your background.
So the key then, the sources seem to say, is deliberately adding personality traits.
That's the nugget. Yeah.
How does that actually change the conversation, though?
Well, the argument is it completely transforms it. It shifts your English from just like listing facts to actually creating an emotional connection. Because you're sharing something fundamentally human, right? Their character, their little quirks, what makes them, it adds that color, that texture.
That makes a lot of sense. It's less like reading off a CV and more like,
Yeah.
giving a glimpse into who they really are. So what does that look like practically? Did the sources give examples?
Oh, yeah, some really good concrete ones. So instead of just, my mother is a teacher, full stop.
Which is just a fact, right?
Exactly. They suggest adding something about her nature. Like, my mother is a teacher. She's also very kind and hardworking.
Oh, okay. Yeah, see that those extra words immediately give you a feeling about her, don't they?
Instantly. It tells you about her character, not just her profession.
Right. So much more revealing. What about siblings?
Yeah, so for a sibling, they suggest maybe focusing on passions or talents. So instead of, my sister's a designer, maybe something like, my sister's really creative. She loves painting.
See, it's not just her job. It's about something innate, something she values, enjoys. It paints a bit of her inner world.
And this works for, like, older generations, too. Or cousins, people you don't see every day. The sources mention that.
Definitely. They show how powerful it is. Think about a grandparent. There's a lovely example they use describing a grandfather who tells amazing stories.
Ah, yeah.
That simple phrase, it just conjures up images, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Sitting, listening, learning family history, maybe. It suggests wisdom, patience, his role in the family.
It's about his impact, really, not just grandfather.
Precisely. And that cousin example, too. My cousin is funny and always makes everyone laugh.
Right. You instantly know what kind of energy they bring, how they make people feel. It's vivid.
And what's fascinating, and the sources explore this, is why this works so well, why these little details matter so much.
Okay.
They suggest it's because we connect through shared feelings, relatable stuff, mentioning the stories, the humor. You're basically inviting the listener into a shared human experience. The joy of a laugh, the comfort of a story, like building little bridges.
Yeah, I think they called them narrative bridges or something like that.
Yeah.
It lets the listener move from just hearing facts to actually sort of feeling the people.
So it's moving from describing a role to describing a relationship almost, how they are in the world.
Exactly that. You get to share the lived experience of knowing them, not just ticking boxes. And that's huge for sharing who you are, because our identity is so tied up with people who influenced us,
Right.
their qualities.
Okay. So pulling it all together from this deep dive, but basically adding those personality details, those little descriptions, it really changes how you talk about family in English.
It elevates it from just functional information sharing to something personal, a story about character and connection.
Right. And maybe for you listening, it's worth thinking about your own family now. Beyond their job or their basic role, what are the first couple of personality things that jump out?
Give that a try.
And maybe consider this final thought. If you could only add one extra word or short phrase for each key family member, what would it be? And how does adding just that one thing change the whole feeling when someone hears it? So imagine this, right? You're somewhere new, maybe a work thing overseas, and someone asks, so tell me about your family. Seems simple, but wow, it can feel kind of high stakes. Today, we're diving into our sources to give you, well, a shortcut. Not just answers, but, how to confidently handle that chat. We want to pull out those nuggets that turn it into, like, a real connection.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating, I think, is how these basic questions, the ones we maybe don't think twice about, they're actually quite sophisticated, socially speaking. They're not just facts. The research we looked at shows they kind of test the waters, shared values, where you are in life, even cultural stuff that's not said out loud. So getting these basics down, well, it's not just vocabulary, it's a huge step towards feeling, comfortable, properly informed, and getting those aha moments where you're not just talking, you're actually, like, connecting.
Okay, right. Let's unpack this a bit. The material we've got, it doesn't just list questions. It really highlights how things like how many people are there in your family, or do you have any siblings? How these act as, like, conversational scaffolding. Our sources say they're sort of designed for, low-stakes information exchange, setting things up for deeper talk later, and then the slightly more personal ones. Are you married, or do you live with your parents? How do they fit in? Finding common ground.
Well, what's really insightful there is how they work. As simple as they seem, they're like a gentle invitation. That's what the studies suggest. They're not interrogations, they're just universal starting points. They let both people kind of see if there's common ground, shared family stuff or maybe adult milestones. It's about finding that resonance. It lets you figure out how much you might want to share, gives you room.
Okay, yeah. This is where it gets really interesting, I think. The insights aren't just memorize this answer. It's about how you deliver them, kind of strategically. Like, for how many people are there in your family? Oh yeah, there are 5 people on my family. It's fine, straightforward. But the sources also point out, maybe add a little detail, something engaging. Instead of just, yes, I have one brother and one sister, maybe add, like, my brother's a chef, actually, and my sister's an artist, so dinners get interesting, you know? Or if you're not married, no, I'm not married, could be followed by maybe, I'd enjoy my independence or focusing on my career. Just a bit more context, if you want. It's about giving you that control.
Exactly. And if we connect that to the bigger picture, practicing not just the words, but these delivery strategies, that really boosts your confidence massively. It shifts you from just like translating in your head to actually being in the conversation. That's social dance. The research suggests this readiness. It reduces the mental effort, right? Your brain isn't scrambling. You can be present. And that doesn't just feel good like an accomplishment. It lets you seem confident and crucially lets you then turn it around. Ask about their family. That's real back and forth.
Right. So what does this all boil down to for you, the listener? It's not about memorizing for some test. It's about building like a flexible toolkit for real connection. By getting a handle on these nuanced responses, you can share your story clearly, sure, but also avoid that feeling of being, overwhelmed in social moments. It's about being a more active part of the conversation. Engage.
Which brings up, I think, an important question for you to consider. Beyond just giving the answers, how can you really take these basic phrases, internalize them, use them not just to share your own story, maybe with a bit more depth, but also to, truly listen, to connect more deeply with others. Just think about how mastering this could help you build rapport, maybe spark some unexpected conversations, and just foster a greater sense of belonging, all from understanding the kind of subtle art of talking about
today's
your roots.
deep dive. It's all about a really core piece of English, something absolutely essential for talking about, well, yourself, people in your life, family especially.
Right. And the sources here, they give a really focused look at it like a basic grammar point. It might seem simple, but it's actually, a key building block for clear communication, confident communication, too.
Right. It's about how we talk about possession, relationships, and it really boils down to just two tiny verbs, has and have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And getting these right, it's so crucial for sounding natural when you're sharing details about yourself or your connections.
And what's interesting is how clearly the source material just lays out the rule, the main distinction.
Yeah, it does. It tells us has is specifically for the third person singular. So he, she, and it.
Right. Just those three. And then it clearly states the rule for have. You use have with all the others.
Yep. I, you, we, and they. It seems straightforward, maybe. But this simple split covers so much of how we describe things, our place in the world.
And the sources, they give some great simple examples too. Really helps lock the rule in.
Yeah.
Especially for family stuff.
Yeah, those are helpful. Should we walk through them?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So first, showing has. The example is he has two brothers.
Okay.
So there's he's, third person singular matched up perfectly with has. It just sounds right.
It does. It feels natural when you say it correctly.
Right.
And the examples for have are just as clear, like, I have a big family.
Perfect. Shows I connecting directly with have. First person singular.
Follows the rule exactly.
And then there's one for she. Another has example. She has 3 children.
Right. Again, she needs has. It just keeps reinforcing that pattern, doesn't it? Third person singular.
It really does. And finally, for a plural subject, we. The source gives us, we have Sunday lunch together every week.
Okay, so we takes have. Makes sense.
These examples really show how this quite basic rule lets you communicate real facts about relationships, connections. And for you, as a learner, trying to get fluent in English, nailing this distinction, knowing instantly, okay, has with he, she, it, has with I, you, we, they, it makes such a difference.
Oh, definitely. It's not just about, like, ticking a grammar box. It's about confidence, being able to share your stories, describe your world, without tripping up or hesitating over these small words.
It lets you express those connections, the really important ones, clearly, effectively. So it's not just some dry grammar point, right? It's a tool.
A tool for connection, absolutely.
So just to quickly recap this deep dive, looking at the source material, the main insight is that pretty simple rule for has versus have.
Right. Has goes with he, she, and it.
And have goes with I, you, we, and they.
Getting that pair right, it's fundamental.
And maybe thinking a bit bigger, just consider how much these two little verbs actually carry.
Yeah.
I mean, has and have, they aren't just about, owning stuff. Literal possession.
True. When you say, I have a family, or she has children.
Exactly. You're talking about belonging, relationships, shared life. It's kind of amazing how much meaning is packed into them.
These small words, they're really powerful containers for describing, well, the most human bonds we have.
So something to think about. Maybe pay attention today. See how often you hear or use has and have, and just notice the weight they carry.
We're looking at something pretty fundamental, the significance of talking about your family, sharing your roots.
Yeah, and this deep dive, it's really centered on one core idea from the sources, which is just how crucial that family unit is.
Right, and what happens when you actually, share that part of yourself?
What really jumps out from the material is this framing of family as your first team.
First team. I like that. It's quite evocative, isn't it?
It really is. It immediately kind of grounds the whole thing. It's not just like people you're related to. The sources present it as the absolute starting point for who you are and the support you get.
Yeah, and they really unpack that, don't they? Why that term first team fits. The material highlights these key roles, shaping your core values, right? Being the ones who actually champion your dreams, whether they're huge or, kind of small.
And often, crucially, being the people still standing beside you when maybe others have stepped back a bit. That's a strong point in the texts.
It really is. And the material's clear. This isn't just like a Western idea or specific to one culture.
Exactly. It explicitly says something like, in any country, in any language, family matters. It's framed as just universal, a basic human building block, no matter where you look.
Okay, so if we accept that premise, family, as this universal foundational first team, then the sources get really interesting about the act of talking about them.
Right.
It's not just reciting facts or dates. There's something else going on. The material suggests there's a real powerful outcome tied to sharing your family's story.
Especially, it seems, when you do it with a sense of warmth, love, respect. That seems key.
Yeah. So what is that outcome?
Well, this is where the sources draw a direct line. It basically posits that sharing stories about your family, your roots. It's powerful because, and I think this is almost a direct quote, when you share stories about your family, people connect with you deeply.
Deeply, so not just surface level.
No, it's presented as cause and effect. Share this, get that deep connection.
That's more than just a nice thought, isn't it? The sources seem to treat it as a key insight. Talking about where you come from, your first team, it's presented as this really potent way to forge genuine, deep bonds with other people.
Right. It suggests that by revealing that fundamental layer, your roots, you're kind of creating a bridge.
A bridge for others to connect?
Yeah, on a much more meaningful level than just, everyday chit-chat. It taps into something shared. Because
we all have roots. We all have some kind of first team experience.
Precisely. Even if the experiences are vastly different, the fact of having roots is universal. So the material suggests opening up about yours invites understanding, maybe empathy.
And that fosters that deeper connection it talks about. It's about maybe vulnerability, finding common ground.
I think that's exactly what the material implies. Common ground in the stories that made us who we are.
So wrapping up this look at the material, the main takeaway feels pretty straightforward, but also quite profound. The sources really push for acknowledging family as that first team, understanding their impact, and then recognizing that just talking about them, sharing those stories, it's a powerful tool.
Maybe one of the most powerful tools we have for building real, genuine connections. It reframes it, doesn't it? It's not dwelling on the past.
No, it's presented as an active strategy almost for enriching your current relationships, building those connections now.
Directly supported by the insights we've been discussing from the material.
Which brings us to a final thought then. Something really drawn from that emphasis in the sources on connection.
Okay.
If sharing these family stories really does create such deep connection, then maybe consider this. What does the way you choose to share those stories? What does that reveal about the specific roots, the unique first team that shaped you?
That's definitely something to think about. How the telling reflects the tale, so to speak.
Exactly. Something for you to mull over.
That brings us to the end of episode 49 of SpeakNest English Podcast Zone. Now you know how to describe your family in English with clarity and feeling. In the next episode, we'll discuss how to talk about your home and neighborhood in English, perfect for friendly chats or interviews. Keep practicing, keep smiling, and stay connected.